All set, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I'd like to call the meeting of the Fitchburg Board of Public Works to order at 5:30. Attending tonight, we have a full quorum. Kim Lobdell, Sarah Schroeder, Michael Granetsky, Dave Woolbarn, and myself, Dave Herbst, attending tonight's meeting along with our city engineer, Bill Balke. The first order, public appearances for non-agenda items not being in the meeting. Is there anyone here on a non-agenda item that would like to speak?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. So then I'll move on to approval of the August 31st minutes. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I so move we approve the minutes August 31st.
Okay. Have a second?
I'll second.
Moved by Wilborn, second by Lobdell. Any discussion? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay. Hearing none. All in favor of approving the August 31st Board of Public Works minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye, okay. Minutes are approved. Next agenda item number 4, report of the department head. Bill?
Got it. Good afternoon.
Afternoon, Bill.
Yeah, I just wanted to give you a couple updates regarding the construction that's been going on in Fitchburg. Fish Hatchery Road, we opened up Traceway Drive. I keep doing it. Traceway Drive on Friday. So that opened up some new traffic opportunities for the neighborhood. We're proceeding along with the construction of the retaining walls up there. The post and panel walls are going up where they put the post in the ground, they put the wood in there, then they put on some concrete, shotcrete, and form it up. So those walls will match the existing or the new retaining walls that are by Associated Bank and Dairy Queen. So we're not looking to do a major traffic switch until the end of construction, pretty much, where they're going to be moving traffic to the outside, doing some landscaping and pavement marking. So that'll be later in October. And the construction of Greenway Cross is underway, where they're installing the utilities around the intersection. It's one of the most heavily congested main areas for utilities in Fitchburg, I think. Every utility's got a main feeder coming in, gas, electric, all the cable hubs, water, sewer. It's all happening right there at that corner. So there's lots of action up there, trying to figure out exactly how to get around everybody and work together with different utilities. So they're carefully doing that right now. The roundabout is starting to be constructed up there by Park Bank, and yeah, it's quite the work up there. Curb and gutter is going to be starting soon, and paving soon after that. So it's a good project so far. Not a lot of hiccups, but we are finding some things that weren't quite put in the way we thought they were when you dig into the ground. So we're having to work around some of those conflicts and go forward from there. Over on McKee Road, we got some good news that the lighting cabinet is going to be coming in for the Badger State Trail ahead of schedule. So we're still going to try to meet that September 30th deadline of opening up the bridge. So the bridge will be open and the south approach will be open. But I think they're going to have to finish up the north approach a little bit further into October. So, but you'll be able to go north to south on the Badger State Trail, hopefully by October 1st. Yeah, that project, we just had a weekend switch, traffic switch over the weekend on Seminole Highway that, caused some detours that weren't expected. So we're going for, and we're still looking at trying to get that completed by November, I think 14th is November 3rd or 4th, something like that is the deadline. So they'll be done before that, and that project will be done. before the elections get underway. The traffic signals over at at Lacey Road and we've got everything up, and they're going to turn those on to a flash starting tomorrow morning. So we'll flash those for 2 days and then turn them into a full operation on Thursday. So those signals will be up and running at that time. The Sain Road project that we've got under consideration tonight for doing the design on that project from Aurora all the way up to McCoy. So we're working on that. Lacey Road from Seminole Highway to Fitchburg Road, we've got a 80% design completed with an estimate on that project. And I don't think we'll be able to get that done next year, given the timeline that we would need to acquire the property. So it'll be, we're looking at the options of how much can we get done, or if we should even start next year on the project, depending on when the bids come in. The stormwater stuff, Lake Barney study we've got going on. There's a presentation, there'll be a presentation on Wednesday for Committee of the Whole on the results and the cost-benefit analysis that we're looking at over there, what the problems are, what we found out, and then any solutions that we have coming forward and the cost benefits so that we can zero in on those and go forward with a design solution for next year and construction the following year. Let's see, Goose Lake, that one, we've got some alternatives that we're looking at in detail that it won't solve the problem. It'll lower the flood condition. It might reduce the time frame that it floods, but there's really no way of getting rid of that water totally out of Fitchburg Road altogether, is what we're finding out. We could reduce it down to 3 inches of water in the road. That might happen once every 10 years, every 15 years. But it's a really expensive, we could do an option that would do that, but it's very expensive and involves a lot of community input, especially from the people downstream that would be receiving the water, because it really involves, one of the solutions involves more of a larger outlet for the lake and sending more stream water downstream. Yeah, we're just busy with all the construction going on, subdivisions. Our department is pretty busy with Terra Vesta, Crescent Crossing, Fahey Field sale want to get done by the end of the year. So we're out there full time, doing all the construction, inspection, and management for those projects as well. And snow season is coming up too. So we went over all the maps that we've got for the different areas that we're going to be plowing this year for trails and paths, as well as the roads that are coming in, and trying to come up with a good solution on how to mitigate the snow from accumulating too much, and what we're going to do in certain areas, because we have to look at the smart code areas that we don't have a lot of areas right now where the sidewalk is right up against the road, and what to do with that snow once the homeowners or the property owners push it out to the street. And so we're looking at different ways of addressing those issues, and our policies actually for who plows the trails, when do we plow them, when do property owners plow them, commercial properties and things like that. So I'd like some input from the board on that, and I'd like to bring that forward at the next meeting if possible, so that we can maybe look at and see what our fair and consistent policy will be going forward with that. Yeah, tonight we're going to talk about the drainage a little bit coming up with private properties and discharging of drainage on the adjacent properties, so we can start the discussion on that. Yeah, we're pretty busy all around, so you have any questions, I can answer them.
No, thank you for that very extensive report. Questions for the city engineer? I have two. You alluded to, you found some things on Fish Hatchery Road, when you dug up that you didn't expect. Are you at liberty to elaborate a little bit? What they were?
Well, today we just ran into a water main issue. The way it was mapped out and the way it was located wasn't actually where it ended up. And we have to, do a redesign of the water main to get it connected into the new water mains that we're putting in. It's not going to be an ideal solution, but I think we've got a pretty good handle on that out there. But yeah, there's lots of, like I said, there's major gas mains coming up through that area and electrical substations and all that fun stuff. It's just difficult to get around, and that southwest corner is just full of utilities, and it's hard to dig around all those.
Well, if I could give you any advice, stress safety.
Yes.
Second thing, you can give me an update. I see the pumping equipment over there in the Sub-Zero pond. I assume the pond went down quite a bit. We had a dry stretch in August, and then we had some rain. Do you have any update on that? Have we started pumping? Do you have any update?
Yeah, we've been pumping for about 2 weeks now, and we're just about down to the point that we have to create a sump to get the rest of the water out. So it's almost down to the bottom of the wetland scrape that was done a few years ago. We've been pumping it into the pond in Marketplace, and that goes downstream to another pond. We found out that we had to go and take out some stop logs in the outlet structure because it was holding too much water back, and the water was backing up into the system. Usually we don't get a lot of water going that way, but since we've been pumping, we noticed that there was a high water level. We found out what the issue was and let it go, so it won't cause issues in the future.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate the comments. All right. Without any other questions, next agenda item number 5, review items, review of utility July P-card purchases and August checks. Does anyone have any questions on this? I don't, so going once, going twice. All right, no questions, Bill.
All right.
You're off the hook to this week. All right. Next, review of regulations for diverting private stormwater drainage. So let's open up this discussion. Bill, do you want to lead us off? Maybe do you have a quick overview of anything we've found, or any? We see the regulations in front of us. These things are always a little bit vague, but do you take anything out of this section 30-25, our Fitchburg ordinance here?
Yeah, our Fitchburg ordinance with regard to any runoff, it's in section 30 of the stormwater code. And essentially what it says is that, we're not, any stormwater discharges downstream, you can't impact the properties downstream from there. If there's any runoff that endangers any property or health or safety, they have to mitigate those issues so that the city's not harmed. It's a pretty general ordinance, and as you alluded to, it's made that way just so that we could have the most discretion as to how to apply that to properties. There are some ordinances that are out there from other communities that do specifically say you can't discharge your downspout or your sump pump onto adjacent properties. And actually we found, the state Supreme Court had made a ruling a few years after those ordinances went into place that you really don't have that responsibility to do that. That the downstream impacted property, if the water was going there previously, which most do, that you can't, file a lawsuit and, claim for damages. Our Wisconsin, or the Dane County also, they push it back on to the local approval authority, that if there's a significant increase of runoff downstream or volume or flooding or soil erosion, that, I'm sorry, I was just trying to read that county one that Kim had sent over. That the local authority determines, whether or not, those downstream issues are significant, and to mitigate those.
Bill, what about the fact though that where people are blocking it below where people's natural runoff goes down? That I believe would be a no-no, right? Where they're blocking where the natural flow was and is backing this water up, so it's getting into people's basements because of the fact they blocked off an area below where the natural flow is going.
Right. And Wisconsin common law drainage for that prohibits that from happening. So we're covered under the Wisconsin statutes to do that.
I guess where I'm coming from, can you go in there and clean it out so the water flowage would go back the way it used to be before they blocked it, is where I'm coming from with this.
That I'm not sure how that would happen. If that would be a local ordinance that we would have to.
Are we going to have to make a local ordinance to stop that, or what?
That I'm not sure of. I think it would be more clear if we had an ordinance to do that. But as we've been handling it in the past, we put it on the property owners to resolve those issues between themselves if they block the drainage. And we put that on the plats, that the drainage has to be maintained by the property owners, and we have drainage plats that show how the water is supposed to be straightened, and we give that information to the property owners and say, you guys got to fix it. So that's what we have been doing.
I guess where I'm getting at is how are we going to get this ball rolling so people start to clear out what they plugged up?
The way I read the ordinances that you attached, and I did do a little bit of research and provided Bill some of this information, is that basically what all of them say is you cannot change the direction of flow of the existing drainage patterns. So by blocking it off, you are changing the direction of flow because it's backing up to an area where it wouldn't be. Or if you dig something out to get it away from your house and send more downstream, you are changing the existing drainage patterns. But as Bill said, the key to this is they're all written sort of vague and left more at the discretion. Pretty much comes down to the local municipality, and it works on so it's a violation of the ordinance, but it's more of an education thing than it is, what kind of enforcement do you have? It's a violation of it. You could fine them if you went and talked to the property owners, but it has to be the city engineer's opinion that the existing drainage has been altered and that it is causing harm, danger, health and safety, all those issues to either someone upstream or downstream. So a lot of people always read this as only downstream, where they're trying to get the water away from their house, and then they flood out people downstream. But the same can happen as people upstream as if you do block it. But I mean, even the examples that Bill provided and the things we looked at, they're all purposely written somewhat vague because you need to deal with them on a case-by-case basis. So, I mean, I think if there is a property owner that has a legitimate claim or a legitimate issue or a complaint, then they need to go to the city engineer and file that complaint, and then city engineering department staff has to go out and look at it and make a judgment as to whether or not they think the pattern of drainage has been altered, and then to deal with it. But I don't know, I did a lot of research on looking at this too, and I don't know where you can find or what you can't write an ordinance to cover every single situation. It's just impossible. Some of it is gonna have to be left up to the discretion of the city engineer, but maybe outlining a process where you feel that the existing drainage patterns have been altered and it's causing you harm, you know, you need to make the city engineering staff aware of that and have to do some research. But I'm not sure you can do it through an ordinance because you can't cover everything.
I agree with you, but we gotta do something about what's going on. It's gotta be stopped.
You know, a process I feel would help. You know, otherwise what's happening is, you know, you get some belligerent jerk, you know, that moved here from Madison and now he's flooding his neighbor. And he's a sue me, you know, let's say some retired person that doesn't have the money to, and then you're stuck. Whereas if we put in a process, that they could, whether we have a form that they could submit, you know, and I don't want our city engineer and stormwater purgatory having to rule on every one of these. You know, I think our staff could take these things and make a determination, you know, and make the recommendation to Bill. I don't want I think it would overload our city engineer having to deal with every one of these, but have a process that staff would evaluate and bring back. And if we had that formalized, I think that would get the ball rolling. What do you think, Dave Wilborn?
That would help a lot, I believe, Dave. Yes, that's the main thing, is to get the ball rolling on it.
And I feel like people just don't, they're kind of in limbo. You know, what are they doing? Especially if it's a neighbor that's belligerent and they don't want to, you know, isn't going to cooperate. And I don't necessarily, you know, I never like, you know, the threat of, you know, we're going to fine you or this or that. This is the process. You've been found in violation. Correct it. And if they choose not to, then then we have some, and I don't know what the teeth in the ordinance would be at that point. But.
Yeah, I guess that's my kind of next question is, you know, there's that logical process and then what? They're kind of with a process flow, there's always got to be the and then what's that go along with it. And those can be vague, but, you know, is it the defining thing? Is it like city engineer comes out and says, yes, I can see the flow and you blocked it, fix it. And you know, the city is done with it. And then there's, you know, private legal ramifications of that, or there's some sort of city fining ordinance. Yeah, the and what comes next, it would be my big question.
I think a lot of it is an education process. I think when people do things, they're only looking at their own specific issue and they're not thinking about what happens upstream and downstream. So I think in a lot of cases, I think an education process where you could show or tell them, you know, you did this is what's happening upstream and downstream, you got to find a different way to do it. I think that helps a lot. But if it's, you know, the what's next, it says, you know, if it's a violation of the ordinance, the city has got to have ramifications or consequences for a violation of any ordinance. I mean, that's written into what happens. So if if the city staff tries the education process and tries working with it, and they are clearly belligerent, I mean that the word that Dave used, you know, then I think you have to cite them as a violation of the ordinance and list what the consequences are give them a certain time frame. I mean, that's how it is, even like with noxious weeds and things like that. People who don't, mow their lawns or let these things grow into the parks or whatever. There's a process already established for that in the city where they're notified of a violation of an ordinance. They're given so much time to correct it. And, that's all laid out in the letter that they get. And if not, then they are fined, and that's all specified. But I really think a lot of it can be solved by just education, because I don't think sometimes people realize what they're doing, how it affects someone else.
I agree with you on that too, but I think the other thing is we gotta have something there to, if they're not going to do it, we gotta give them an ultimatum. If you don't do it, we're going to be doing it. And then we'll have to charge you back for it if you don't wanna do it yourself.
I think that's in the process, because I know when I was on our neighborhood association board of directors, we had several complaints from people about noxious weeds and people not doing things. The city actually stepped in, sent them a letter and said, if you don't do it within so many days, we're gonna do it and charge you.
There's a lot of places though that don't have that neighborhood association.
Well, can I suggest, not that he needs any more on his plate, but maybe he could assign it, someone in his staff to draft a process for, a form for making the complaint and the steps to, for city to look at. Bill, could you have one of your staff possibly draft a process document that we could take up and kick around a little bit, get us started?
Sure, I could do that.
Sometime in the next month, if possible.
All right.
Yeah, this is a very personal issue. People that are dealing with it are, they're angry, as you've probably heard, and a lot of things to be mad about. But when you're getting flooded, and the guy above you or whoever doing it and sticking his nose up at you, we'd like our residents treated fair, and I think the same way all of you would. So, see if we can move this ahead and address it. Thank you for the discussion. I'll close that agenda item now. Does anyone else have anything? Thank you Bill for putting this together, Kim for submitting the other documents on this. I appreciate it very much.
I did have a question, again, as it's related to the storm, the rain gardens. So there's a couple areas in Fitchburg where I know people have dug their own rain gardens, maintained them beautifully in the terrace, in between the sidewalk and the street. In the neighborhood that I live in, the development plan actually had some breaks in the curb so that the water could actually run off into pre-specified rain garden areas. At previous meetings, we've discussed, this was actually a good plan for developers to put this into their development plans. And then if I'm remembering correctly, it maybe backed off a little bit on that, or there were going to be some standards that were going to be put in place because sometimes you don't get the infiltration that you're looking for, and or you start to get things that are right on the corner of an intersection, and you might start blocking traffic. A lot of other unintended consequences. So the city was thinking about putting in some sort of guidelines about, if you are going to put in some rain gardens, plant native vegetation no higher than 2-3 feet, something along those lines. Do we kind of have a rough idea on our rain garden still going in for developers? B, do we have any sort of permit process for people that want to put in their own rain gardens? And then C, how do we make sure that those kind of noxious weeds that happens sometimes. How do we make sure, or how can residents be assured that these things aren't going to become more of a weed pit and or something else very, very similar to maybe the surface runoff or some of the other things that the city is trying to prevent.
I'll just address one thing, our stormwater ordinance, if someone wants to put one in, there is a financial, it's small, but there's a financial incentive to do it. You are, I don't know if it's a credit on your stormwater. Bill, do you recall that specifically?
Yeah, there's a credit for applicants who put in rain gardens, rain barrels, some type of infiltration system.
It's relatively modest, you're, like mostly being a good citizen if you do it. But I don't believe we have anything in there about not maintaining them. Anyway, could you possibly look into that for next time, Bill?
Yeah, I'll have a report on that.
Okay, thank you. Michael, anything else on that issue? Thank you for raising that. It's a very good point.
I guess the only other question I had is, when we're currently working with new development, Bill, are these things that are still kind of being planned, or is that something that the city is proactively recommending as we're going through the planning process, or is that completely up to the developer?
It's up to the developer and how they can handle the stormwater for the new development.
Okay.
A lot of smaller developments, like for commercial sites, they will have their own infiltration requirements and rain gardens and things like that. But when you're talking about like a subdivision, sometimes it's better to handle it all in one big facility than to have a bunch of little pockets of things. And like you were mentioning, in your neighborhood, the homeowners association maintains all of those. And in Terra Vista, where there's a lot of those infiltration areas, they also have set up an association to maintain those in forever. But they do take some effort to get them going and to keep them clean, and you have to have a champion out there to do that. The city of Madison, their program, they actually have applicants that come in and say, I'd like to put in a rain garden. The city will, front 50% of the cost, and that homeowner will take care of it because they've got an investment in it. The city doesn't really have that program right now in place for those terrace ones in the public right-of-way. And we just don't have the funding to get out there and keep the maintenance on them. So we do depend on, homeowners and associations to take over that maintenance.
I'd probably add one thing, the new subdivisions going in, the smart grid ones, there's not room on any, really, I don't think on any of those lots for a rain garden. Barely enough room for a flower bed, but.
Yeah, if you stop by Terra Vista out there, you'll see how many there are in the terrace, and you'd be amazed at how they squeezed them in there. And
They did, okay.
yeah, they're all over out there. So, but like you said, in those areas where there's sidewalk right up to the curb and things like that, where there's really dense and commercial development, that's not an area that you would put these in. But in your residential neighborhood where the runoff isn't quite as great, they can take that additional water and they do look pretty decent.
And the only other point I would ask is, and I think this is maybe where the city should and could, maybe make an ordinance or some sort of recommendation, is that, somebody may want to put in a rain garden that is right on the border of their property. And it may not sit very well with, neighbors that are on the side of that. So much like fencing, if it has to be a certain X% back on your lot, I think some guidelines around that would be really, really helpful. Or they should maybe even could be the same as the fencing. But putting something right on the edge of a property line might be one of those things that starts getting people coming to the city and looking for resolution. But if there was an ordinance, we can kind of point to that and just be like, here it is.
If someone wants to put one in, is there a formal application process? You know, say if I wanted to put one in my neighborhood, can I just dig a hole and create one, or do I need to get, I'm sorry for not knowing the answer to this, Michael. You know, I was there when we created the stormwater ordinance. But is there an approval on that, Bill, or does a plan have to be submitted to the city, you know, an existing neighborhood?
You can put one in on your own, and not claim a credit for it. We do have guidance out there for, how to install a rain garden, how to maintain them, where to situate them. So we've got, you know, some guidance on that. Where the city sees them is when the applicant would like a credit on their stormwater bill, and they would submit a formal application for credit, that they have a rain garden installed, and the city would go out and look at it and say, yep, that's a rain garden and it's in good shape, it's well maintained. And I'm not sure if there is a renewal date, like every 5 years, you know, the city goes out and sees that you have this out there and it's still working, or if it's annual. I don't remember the dates, but there's a check on that to make sure that, you know, once you put it in, you maintain it.
I think it probably makes sense that the standard setbacks, you know, like a fence would apply, but I don't know if that's spelled out anywhere. Could you maybe check on that for next time, Bill?
Yeah, I'll bring all that information together for that.
Fantastic. Thank you.
And then one other final thing, because again, there's some new development going out, and I personally, you know, kind of see this in my neighborhood is some of the rain gardens, you know, if they're applicable or if they apply for, you know, the developer put them in. So at that point, is the developer able, you know, to claim that stormwater credit for the development costs, whatever that happens to be, or is it an ongoing thing for the actual property owner moving forward? And then second part of that is if there is something that is in front of, you know, a 0 lot line house, where you've got the rain garden, you know, half on one side, half on the other, do both qualify for having a rain garden for stormwater rate?
Yeah, I'll have to look into those unique situations you're talking to.
Yeah, and even if it's, you know, I wouldn't imagine that comes up too terribly often, but, you know, if it was just kind of like, hey, you know, only, you know, one property owner per rain garden, first come, first serve, that's cool. If it's, you know, both people can claim it because it's right in front of it's on their property, that would be cool as well. Or if it's, you know, just the builder gets it and it's a one-time thing when it's new development, and we just go from there.
Another question I have for you, Bill, are they still doing like they did up through Lacey Road here, where they're, you know, the stormwater runoff kind of goes into your yard and sits there, it doesn't go anywhere? You know, with the stormwater coming down Lacey Road, you know, it goes in and then supposedly supposed to go into our yards, sink in.
I don't think so.
They're not doing that anymore?
No.
They did out here?
No.
Thank God for that, because it gives you a high water, let me tell you, especially in the spring.
You're on a hill.
Yeah, I'm on a hill, but I'm not supposed to have high water.
All right, any other discussion? Thank you, everyone, for your contributions. That was good. It was a very good discussion. Next on the agenda is first agenda item A. Give me a minute to scroll down here. Okay. Agenda item A, resolution R 156-20, engineering services for Sain Road reconstruction. Can I have a motion to approve this resolution?
154. Not 150.
154-20, I'm sorry.
Before we even start, I just want to let everybody know I'm abstaining from all discussion in this topic, please.
Thank you. Please note in the minutes, Lobdell, conflict of interest, abstain from voting or discussion. Do we have a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve R 15420.
Moved by Schroeder. We have a second.
Second.
Second by Gronetsky. Bill, I'll let you start us off on this.
All right. This is a proposed capital improvement project that's in our plan to reconstruct Sain Road from Aurora all the way up to McCoy Road. And what we're doing there would be changing it from a rural section to an urban section. And based upon the traffic, it looks like we would have a possible 3-lane facility or a 2-lane with a median with turn lanes and things like that. The project that we're looking at would include some bicycle and pedestrian accommodations along the roadway, filling in some sidewalk gaps in the areas, bike lanes on the road. We've already got a nice trail along the side, on the west side of the road, so we don't really have to do anything with the trail. But we're also looking at some major safety improvements. One of them is at the intersection of Lacey Road and Sain, where we would be looking to signalize that intersection. Also move the roadway to the west, away from the traffic, the railroad tracks there, so that we could accommodate some storage for buses and vehicles. So that would be a signalized intersection there. The intersection of East Sherrill and Sain, that intersection there is we're looking at several alternatives, either signalizing with different kinds of turn lanes, or possibly a roundabout at that intersection if it would fit with the existing and proposed development in the area. Also looking at a few other intersections such as Nine Bark, for some improvements there for safety and pedestrians for crossing that area, and at McCoy Road, where that one would fit nicely to have a roundabout in that area, just for the traffic circulation that it receives, and the safety concerns that we have at that intersection. We are going to be looking at the vertical alignment at Aurora, where it comes out, or not Aurora, Argus, next to the fire station there. You can't turn left out of that intersection currently because of sight distance restrictions. So during that time, we're going to be looking at possibly lowering the road so we can improve the sight distance, if we can get enough sight distance there to allow a full access intersection. So you'd be able to turn left and right and into that intersection from Sain Road. The proposal that we have will also be looking at all the stormwater requirements for the area. Because of the roadway, the new impervious area, we're going to have to be installing some practices such as ponds, infiltration areas, biofiltration. We're going to be looking at a few scenarios there to assist with the stormwater requirements that we have for our ordinance. We did put out the RFP for bidding, and we received 8 proposals. From those 8, we narrowed it down to 2 for interviews. And after the interview, we selected KL Engineering as the most qualified to do the design for the work for the scope of services. From there, we negotiated a contract to, as you'll see in the packet, for all of the different areas of the proposal and the fees for doing that. We have approximately $100,000 for contingency because we don't know if we're going to need additional stormwater facilities, or we don't know if we're going to need to replace a culvert, that's a large culvert that's out there due to the road reconstruction. So we do have a fair amount of contingency in the proposal as well to account for some of those things that just might come up. We may need additional right-of-way after we get the design completed. We may need to, have some assistance with public meetings, things like that. So I guess if you have any questions regarding the proposal, Samantha Herheim from KL Engineering is here to specifically address anything that's in the proposal for the work that's going to be completed. And we're just asking for your approval on this tonight so that we can get started on all of the design that's going to be done. The timeline for this project would be that we're going to be designing it in 2020-21 and bidding it late in 21 for an early 22 construction. We feel that by the time we get all of the right-of-way acquired, utilities relocated, it would be too late in 21 to bid it out and get fair prices from competing contractors. So we are proposing that the construction be completed in 2022 for this project, and we are planning on having 2 public informational meetings. One is a kickoff meeting to get ideas back from the public so that we can further proceed with some of the ideas that we have to enhance those. And then another one after we take those take that information into account and have a design that's that we would be using for platting and property acquisition. So just lots of questions.
I have a question for you. It's nothing to do with the KL engineering whatsoever, but I'm trying to figure out why the board was left out of the bidding on this, why we didn't receive any info of who bid what, for how much or nothing. All of a sudden, it's just bang, KL engineering has it. And we don't get any various cost assumptions out of the other 7 bidders. And I believe Public Works should have had that.
Okay. Yeah, the reason that we did not include those within the pre-approval that you have tonight is the assumptions that were made from each engineer was different. So every proposal had a cost, but what they were providing was different. So you couldn't say they were all the same. Some of them, like had the city doing more work than what the engineer would be doing, or they just weren't qualified in the area that we needed them to put together the proposal to do the design. But I can get that information for you. It's just hard to compare, what they're providing with the cost.
I still think we should be, get the quotes on it to see where we're sitting with it.
Yeah. Bill, what was I could ask this, you interviewed 2 firms and obviously you looked at the bids. What was the criteria? Why were the two firms selected over the other ones? Can you enlighten us a little? Because I think you hear Mr. Wilburn. We're concerned not that I have the utmost confidence in that firm, and being a Fitchburg-based company, I view them very favorably. But at the same time, we have to make sure these things are competitive and follow the process. So give me a little insight into what you selected 2 firms to interview. What were the criteria, or why were those 2 selected?
Let me get.
you know, you've worked with them in the past, their, you know, the presentation, you know, their proposal that they presented, you know, give me something here.
Yeah. Essentially, we set up an evaluation for each of the firms. And I think we had 7 criteria that we were looking at. We were looking at experience with similar projects, gave them a score of 1 to 10. Qualifications of the personnel that they were using for the project, again, 1 to 10. Completeness of the project approach, did they give us everything that we wanted to complete for this project? Familiarity with the Fitchburg requirements for design. That was a key component as well. Experience with preparation of transportation project plats, and the ability to meet the proposed work schedule. And then cost was also a factor. But we really didn't look at the cost. We were looking at the experience, the qualifications, the project approach for completeness. And I'm just trying to find the information that we had for all of those that we went through and re-ranked those 1 through 10. And out of the 8 that we had, 2 of those, you know, rose to the top. And it was very, very important for us to have an engineering firm that gave us a very complete design that had good quality control, that we weren't having to double check and triple check, and the work that was given to us. So the 2 firms that we selected had that experience from different proposals that have been submitted and design work done for the city. And then we looked at the cost and the time frame to be able to get things done. So that's how those 2, and I'm sorry I don't have the form here that had those ranked, but I'll find it and get it to you.
Bill, thank you. That was a perfect answer. I have to be honest, you know, that you enumerated, you know, explained the criteria. You know, I'm comfortable if I was questioned by someone, you know, it didn't seem like we're using competitive bids. You know, you spelled it out very well. The last question I would have is, did K&L, did they know they were selected when you were negotiating the price? You know, you selected them, and then, you know, I guess did they know where they're going to get the work, and then you think, what can you do it for? You know, you see where I'm coming from here. Why that is maybe a point of concern.
Yeah, we sat down with KL and discussed the scope of the project, and then they came back with what their final price was for the project, and our eyes bugged out it, and we said, no way. So we went back to the drawing board probably 3 or 4 different times to make sure that our scope, we were fully understanding the scope of what we wanted for the city. And it was very close to what we had budgeted for the project. And there were some extra things that we had asked them to do, such as the subsurface investigation, you know, to have that contract under their services. There were the real estate negotiation was another one that we'd asked them to complete. And then, so, yeah, we had that back and forth probably for two months, I think it was, to finally come to the contract that we agreed on.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wilbarn, does that ease your concerns here? It does mine.
Yeah,
Like it's been explained to me.
I would have liked to see them come to us a little earlier with it.
Okay, I agree. Okay. So I guess we're requesting 2 things, Bill, before I call a vote. I'd still like to vote. I'd like to vote on this tonight, but I would like to have that criteria, you know, your evaluation sent to the board, you know, not for public use, for confidential, and those prices for us to look at.
All right.
Thank you, Bill. Very, like I said, very, very good explanation for everything there. Anyone else have any questions? Sarah or Michael?
Yeah, real quick. So when we look at the kind of the area that you described, Bill, McCoy to, is it McCoy to Lacey?
Yeah, it's the first intersection south of Lacey.
Okay, yeah. So and this is maybe if you can generalize this too, do we kind of, when we're starting to get a scope put together, do we just kind of say from, here's a starting point, Aurora, here's the ending point, McCoy, go. And then these vendors are kind of coming up with what they think, it would look like? Or is this something that, the city is kind of going, this is something that we would like to look at. Here are our ideas on how these intersections should flow. We just need somebody to kind of handle the details of how to make this happen. Is it one, the other, kind of a combination of both, varies per project?
It's a combination of both, actually. We had Strand Engineering do like a pre-proposal because we were going to apply for a grant for state funding or the local MPO funding for this project. So we had them look at, the traffic and the different safety problems that, popped up, the obvious ones. And so they kind of came back with, well, this is what you kind of need. You need, this many lanes for traffic. You need to look at these areas for traffic or for intersection improvements. And so we kind of got a general idea that way. And then we took that, the city did, and refined that into the scope, the RFP that we were asking for consultants to put forward. And so, we refined that and said, you got to look at these intersections. You got to look at this for traffic impacts. You have to look at this for stormwater, environmental quality. You got historical properties. Put together a team and to come up with proposals, meet the public public participation process, things like that. So we had 10, 11 points in there that they had to meet and come up with solutions for.
Okay, so Strand was in on this one where we kind of said, we know we need to do something here, help us figure out some of the design components, and then the contract that we're talking about, or the pre-approval we're talking about tonight, is actually pre-approving the actual consulting stuff that K&L would be actually doing, and does not have the construction or anything like that.
Correct.
This one. Okay,
Correct.
Beautiful. Just want to make sure I got that straight.
Mm-hmm.
And just for clarification, so when you do provide the quotes, it just seems like historically, we usually review the quotes and choose the lowest quote, or if not the lowest quote, a quote with kind of some additional justification. But these won't be able to be compared because they do have different requirements, correct? Just so I'm fully understanding, Bill?
Correct. In addition to the low cost, we looked at the qualifications of each of the firms and the ability to provide the services we were requesting. So while KL was one of the lower prices, they were also the highest qualified. So between the two firms that had the low price and most qualified, we looked at both of those.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Bill. Anything else? Again, good discussion. This time I'd like to call a vote. All in favor of approving resolution R 154-20 signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Next on the agenda, bear with me a sec. With the computer illiterate here. Resolution, hang on, let's scroll here. Resolution R-156-20, authorizing the water utility to file a simplified rate increase application with the PSC of Wisconsin. Do I have a motion to approve Resolution 150-20?
Motion to approve.
Moved by Granetsky. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Wilborn. Bill? Background?
Yes, this is a simplified rate increase for our water utility, just to keep up with expenses and revenues to make sure that we don't have to have a large increase, after several years. So we put these in place to maintain the balance between the expenditures and the revenue so that we don't have to have a large increase, after 3 or 5 years. And based upon our financials, the finance department put this together for us, and it would increase our rates by about $1.22 per quarter for a typical residential home, or $4.88 a year.
Thank you, Bill. So I'd like to add, when Dave Wilburn and I first came on the board, it was every 5 years, and we had to spend a fair amount of money with Baker Tilly, doing this full rate study, had to be filed with the PSC, and I don't know how many years ago it came, we were able to use this simplified one where we would do it more often for smaller increases, and this, I feel works well. We have, I feel, good value for the water. It doesn't cost us a lot of money for this simplified rate study, and it's a good way to keep pace that we're not hitting, when we would go every 5 years, there'd be a relatively large increase. And during that time, the last year or two, we'd maybe be falling behind a little bit. So since we've adopted this, I felt it's worked pretty well for the utility here. Any other comments on this?
And I think it's really helped the people living here by us doing it that way. It's not such a big jump all at one time either.
I agree.
Did we ever look back do we ever look back and say, okay, so before this happened, we were increasing $5 a quarter every 5 years, so $1 per year on average, and now it's $1.30 per year on average. Kind of gone back through and looked at what the adjustment has actually done.
Yeah.
Bill, could you provide, again, hopefully you can assign this to someone. I think Tracy probably could show us what our rates, whether it's per 1,000 gallon or whatever has been for the past 20 years. Would that work for you, Michael? Would a graph like that? I'm kind of curious myself. I haven't watched it that closely myself to know where we are over time. I just know we do have a good value, per gallon of water you get.
I just want to make sure that, if the costs and the, the revenue and the expenses are all kind of on the same trajectory, in this way works. And again, it saves a lot of overhead. I'm all for it. If we don't have like kind of the step approach where it's you maintain at a certain level and then get a little bit of a spike and then bring it over and up and up and up, where you kind of hit these lulls and then have a little bit of an overage for a little while and then hit a little lull. Just making sure that that's been consistent from both where we need to be and if something does need to change, and just this is always a good time to explore, making sure that whatever the anticipated outcome of changing this or doing this is actually doing what it's supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I guess if you're really interested, you could log on to the Wisconsin Public Service Commission's website under water utilities. Fitchburg has the reports. You'll be looking for their water rate report or the water, I forget what it's called. water tariff report, something like that. Anyway, it's got probably 15 years worth of data on there, all the reports that we filed. And you will see some jumps in there. And that's based upon, the different operations that we have. We may have to, go out and do a lot of fixes, and a lot of maintenance. So if we weren't keeping up with the rates, we did have a big jump in those years. But all that data's there. I can have finance, pull that together pretty easily too. But if you're curious, all the reports are out there.
Okay, perfect.
Are we expecting an increase every year? Is this something that comes in front of this board every year, or, because Dave, you were talking about before we did it this way, we had years we didn't do anything, and now we've got this new process. Is it an annual thing, or?
You're asking questions of an old guy that he can't remember. I don't recall we had one last year, but, Dave, do you?
I don't remember having one last year either, Dave.
Yeah.
But you can count on it, at least not next year, the year after, okay?
And then as long as we are talking about that, for those people who are watching at home, I believe the last water bill that I received, I was able to pay online. So we do have that option in the city now. So that was pretty fantastic.
Yeah, some things, like over time, Bill mentioned our water rates, if we have to put in a new well or tower, obviously it's a big expense, but we spent a lot of money over a number of years to put in a meter reading system, so we didn't have to have our employees, walking through the backyard. So, we spent quite a bit on that system, that automated meter reading. And, that was something that was kind of a blip. We now have that. I believe it saves us money as we move forward. Any other questions on this one? Sarah? No? Okay.
No questions.
All right, now I'll call a vote. All in favor of resolution 156-20, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We have, I'd like to, instead of, for amendments, other such, I'd just like to add other such matters. Is there anything board wants to bring up, not necessarily for making a decision, but that they would like to see on another agenda here before we move to announcements, other such matters?
I would like to bring up Jason Geiger's situation. He's got up here on Lacey Road again with the sidewalk.
Specifically, you're asking for, I think you and I are asking the same thing. We would just like a vote of the Board of Public Works on that issue, to be on record, for next time.
What issue are you talking about? I didn't understand what you said.
The sidewalks for that subdivision. We would just like to have a vote on that, be on record, all the boards, voting on that.
Do we have a recommendation?
I believe we do, Bill, or it's been to finance, or it's been to council.
It's been in
I don't recall that
the plan commission as well.
we received it.
Yes.
We had a staff recommendation, I guess, before it went to council the last time.
Yeah,
I would like to have the board to have a vote, to be on record, on that.
We never voted on that.
Yeah, if we could have a next, so I'll be on rec. So, we could have that for next, agenda item next time.
And what's the purpose of having that? Is it to give information to city council when they're making their final decision?
Right on.
Okay.
The city council's made the final decision on that back in June. And in order to have the Board of Public Works reconsider the action that the council approved, you would have to have two council members refer that or rescind their vote and call for a new action on the item.
I will work on that.
I will work on it too.
I will be working on that.
And Bill, just for clarification, it did come to works previously, because when it
Yes.
came to council, am I correct that, because I thought, I'm sorry, I'm trying to pull up our last notes, but I know when we discussed it, you had given us the history of how it had been approved by council, it went to plan, it went to works, but it was just previous. Sorry, trying to pull up my notes.
Public Works did not vote on the sidewalk issue, period. It was just on, dividing out the property is the only thing that was voted on in Public Works.
The Public Works did approve the subdivision improvement agreement on that date, and in that agreement had the sidewalk limitations as to where it was
I
installed.
still think we didn't vote for it. I think it should be brought up. Even a couple of council members have told me it wasn't. So.
Had the sidewalk on the one side, but the other it got, I don't,
Okay.
well, we'll see if we can get two council members to bring it back.
I guess I don't really understand what the whole process is, because I think when it came in June, maybe I wasn't on this board yet. But the subdivision ordinance came before the Board of Public Works, and it had in it, Bill, maybe I'm asking you this question. It had in it the requirement that sidewalks have to be installed. And this Board of Public Works approved that subdivision ordinance. And then, as I recall from our discussion last time, it went to Planning Commission, and Planning Commission took that out, that the sidewalks should not be in on Lacey Road, but on the side road. And then when it went to City Council, the City Council rejected that recommendation from Planning Commission and said they needed sidewalks on both locations as part of the ordinance. Is that a correct summary?
Pretty close.
Might be
I don't agree with that assessment.
I don't.
Just asking for a summary of what
Yeah,
happened.
Because we have a
I'm
resolution.
I'm saying if that had been in there, that guy would have been, the developer would have been at our meeting.
Yeah.
No, he came after it got changed. So, well, if I can't get if two council members don't move to bring it back, it'll be a dead issue, all right? I would just like to be, I don't think I would have, I voted on
I
that.
still consider it an existing development, and just redoing a couple lots on it. And
He's subdividing, so technically it meets the subdivision ordinance requirements.
well, we will see.
Yep. All right, next agenda item number 7. Next Board of Public Works meeting is on October 5th. Does anyone know that they are not going to be able to attend? I believe I'll still be in this hotel room, so I'll be there. If
Your background
you're
is
not,
very similar to it's now, huh?
yeah, if you're not, please let Bill know or Dina know right away, so make sure we're not caught short of a quorum. With that, I would move for adjournment. I have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Schroeder is second. I guess we don't need a motion. I would say motion, second by Lobdell. All right. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 We are adjourned. Thank you for your time.